The emergency klaxons screamed through the crystalline corridors of Threshold 7, their piercing wail cutting through the normally peaceful atmosphere of the Valarian colony. Administrator Chirith pressed her delicate feathered hands against the command console, her large amber eyes reflecting the horrifying data streaming across the holographic displays. Red dots, hundreds of them, swarmed toward her world like a plague of locusts. The Krethic swarm had found them. "How long until our defense fleet arrives?" Chirith asked, though she already knew the answer would break her heart. 17 hours, Administrator," replied her aide, a younger Valarian named Plix, who couldn't stop his wings from trembling. "The Council is mobilizing forces, but—" 17 hours, Chirith interrupted, her voice hollow. She looked at the countdown timer on her screen. The colony shields would fail in 4 hours, maybe 5 if they rerouted all power from non-essential systems. After that, the swarm would descend upon Threshold 7 like the nightmare they were, consuming everything and everyone. 40,000 souls lived on this colony. 40,000 Valarians who had never known war, never experienced violence, never imagined that the galaxy's monsters would find them here on the peaceful frontier. The Galactic Council had promised protection. They had promised safety. But promises meant nothing when death arrived early. Chirith made a decision that would change everything. "Open all emergency channels," she ordered. "Every single one." Plix stared at her. "Administrator, you don't mean—" "All of them," Chirith repeated firmly, "including the sealed frequencies." The young aide's feathers stood on end. "But those channels are marked as forbidden. They lead to the quarantine zones, to the Deathworld sectors." "The Council explicitly forbids." "The Council is 17 hours away." Chirith's voice cracked with desperation. "Our children will be dead in 4. I don't care about protocols anymore. If there's anyone out there, anyone at all who can help us, I'm going to call them." Plix hesitated only a moment before his fingers danced across the controls. The communication array powered up, broadcasting on frequencies that hadn't been used in decades. Frequencies marked with dire warnings in every Council language. Extreme danger. Quarantine species. Do not establish contact. Deathworld origins. Chirith activated the distress beacon herself. Her voice, translated into 100 languages by the automated systems, carried her plea into the dark spaces between the stars. "This is Administrator Chirith of Valarian Colony, Threshold 7. We are under attack by the Krethic swarm. Our shields are failing. We have 40,000 civilians with no military defense. Our fleet cannot reach us in time. This is a general distress call to any ships in range. Please, if anyone can hear this, we need help. We need—" Her voice broke. She closed her eyes and finished simply, "We need a miracle." The message broadcast into the void. Minutes passed. The Krethic swarm drew closer, their bioships pulsing with sickening organic energy. Chirith watched them approach, these creatures that had devoured a dozen civilizations, that left nothing but barren rocks where once there had been life and laughter. The Council channels remained silent. Then, on one of the forbidden frequencies, a response crackled through the speakers. The voice was strange, flatter than most species, with odd tonal qualities, but it was calm, professional, and absolutely certain. "Threshold 7, this is TDFS Indomitable of the Terran Defense Forces. We have received your distress signal. Transmit your exact coordinates and hold your position. We are initiating jump sequence now. Estimated time of arrival, 47 minutes. Repeat, ETA, 47 minutes. Hold position. Indomitable out." Chirith stared at the console. Terran? She had never heard of such a species. But that didn't matter. Someone had answered. Someone was coming. "What's a Terran?" Plix whispered. Before Chirith could respond, their sensors began screaming warnings. Something massive was emerging from faster-than-light travel at the edge of their system. The computer struggled to calculate its size, kept revising the numbers upward. 1 kilometer long, 2 kilometers, 3. The ship that dropped into normal space was unlike anything in Council records. It was a brutal wedge of gray metal, its surface covered in thick armor plating that looked like it could shrug off asteroid impacts. Weapon ports studded every surface, railguns, missile tubes, point defense systems, and devices whose purpose Chirith couldn't even guess. The ship didn't have the elegant curves of Valerian vessels, or the artistic design of other Council races. It looked like it had been built for one purpose only: war. Running lights illuminated words painted on its hull in stark white letters. TDFS, Indomitable. By the ancestors, Plix breathed. What kind of species builds something like that? Their answer came 47 minutes later, exactly as promised. The Indomitable arrived at Threshold 7 just as the colony shields flickered and died. The Krethic swarm, sensing victory, accelerated toward the defenseless world. 200 bioships, each one a nightmare of chitinous armor and organic weapons, descended like a tidal wave of death. The human Dreadnought moved between them and the planet. A new voice came over the communications channel, female this time, with an accent Chirith had never heard. Threshold 7, this is Captain Maria Okonkwo of the Terran Defense Forces. We have your colony on our scopes. All civilians are to remain in your shelters and away from windows. We are engaging hostile forces. This is going to get loud. Captain, Chirith managed to say, her voice shaking. There are 200 enemy ships. You're alone. Perhaps if you wait for our... Administrator, the human captain interrupted gently. We didn't come here to wait. Indomitable out. What happened next would be talked about in Valerian history for generations. The Indomitable didn't retreat or maneuver defensively. It accelerated directly toward the swarm, its massive engines pushing it forward at speeds that seemed impossible for something so large. The Krethic bioships, confused by this suicidal charge, opened fire with their plasma weapons. Green bolts of superheated energy slammed into the human ship's armor. The armor held. Then the Indomitable returned fire, and Chirith understood why these creatures were locked in a quarantine zone. Railguns fired solid projectiles at impossible velocities. Each tungsten rod, accelerated to a fraction of light speed, punched through Krethic bioships like they were paper. Secondary explosions blossomed across the enemy formation. Missile pods opened along the Indomitable's flanks, launching swarms of hunter-killer drones that chased down fleeing bioships with relentless precision. Point defense lasers created a lattice of red light around the Dreadnought, destroying anything that came too close. The Krethic swarm, which overwhelmed enemies through sheer numbers, had never encountered something that treated their numbers as targets of opportunity. In the colony below, Valarians pressed against windows despite the warnings, watching the light show in orbit. They saw the human ship take hit after hit, saw sections of armor glow white-hot and melt away, saw explosions tear holes in its hull. But it didn't stop fighting. It didn't retreat. It pushed forward into the swarm, like a predator that knew no fear. Chirith watched her sensors with growing disbelief. 30 Krethic ships destroyed. 50, 80. The swarm was dying. What are they? She whispered. Plix, his wings rigid with shock, pulled up a file from the deep archives. Old records, sealed documents from the Council's classified databases. He read aloud in a trembling voice. Terrans. Common name, humans. Origin, planet Earth, Sol System, Orion Spur. Classification, Deathworld species, Class 12 hazard. Status, quarantined by Council order. Warning, extremely aggressive, highly adaptable, persistence predators. Do not engage, do not establish contact, do not... An explosion rocked the colony as debris from a destroyed Krethik ship burned through the atmosphere. Shireth grabbed her console for balance. In orbit, the Indomitable fought on against impossible odds. And somehow, impossibly, it was winning. Captain Maria Okonkwo stood on the bridge of the Indomitable, her dark eyes scanning the tactical displays with the calm focus of someone who had commanded ships through hellfire before. Around her, the bridge crew worked with practiced efficiency, calling out status reports in the clipped military language that transcended planets and cultures. Railgun batteries 7 through 12 are depleted, Captain, reported Lieutenant Chen from the weapons station. Reloading now. 45 seconds to hot status. Missile ponds 3 and 8 are empty. 16 and 17 at 60% capacity, added another voice. Hull breaches on decks 7, 8, and 9. Damage control teams responding. Section sealed. The damage control officer's voice remained steady despite the red warnings flashing across his screen. Maria absorbed all the information, calculated probabilities and risks, in the space of heartbeats. Helm, roll us 20 degrees starboard. Let's give them a fresh armor facing. Weapons, focus remaining railgun fire on the bioships breaking for the planet. They don't get through. Aye, Captain. Beside her, Commander James Park stood with his arms crossed, watching the tactical plot. The executive officer had spent 20 years in the Terran Defense Forces, and his weathered face rarely showed emotion. But Maria caught the slight tightening around his eyes when another impact rocked the ship. They're trying to flank us, James said quietly. 40 ships breaking off from the main group, attempting to swing around our stern. Maria nodded. She had seen it too. The Krethik weren't mindless, not entirely. They learned, adapted. They had realized that charging directly at the Indomitable was suicide, so now they were trying tactics. Launch Drone Wing Delta, she ordered. Have them intercept the flanking force. I want those bioships occupied. Launching drones. Small hatches opened along the Indomitable's hull, releasing a swarm of autonomous combat drones. Each one was barely larger than a civilian car, but they moved with frightening speed and coordination. The drones streaked toward the flanking Krethik ships like a school of mechanical piranhas. On the lower decks, Master Chief Elena Vasquez stood in the Marine deployment bay, watching her soldiers prepare for drop operations. The Marines moved with the casual efficiency of professionals, checking weapons, securing armor, and joking with each other despite the battle raging around them. It was a coping mechanism, Elena knew. Humor in the face of fear. It was very human. Think they'll need us, Master Chief? Asked Corporal Jackson, a young Marine with bright eyes and a cocky grin. The Krethik always land ground forces, Elena replied, her voice carrying the rough edge of someone who had fought the swarm before. Once they realize they can't break our ship, they'll try to overwhelm the planet below. That's when we drop. About time, Jackson said, slapping a fresh magazine into his rifle. Getting bored up here. Elena almost smiled. 2 years ago, Jackson had been terrified during his first combat drop. Now he cracked jokes before jumping into hell. That was what experience did to you. It either broke you or turned you into something harder than steel. An alert chimed through the bay. Elena's tactical display lit up with new data. Speak of the devil. Krethik drop pods detected entering atmosphere. Looks like about 50 of them hitting the colony's northern district. The Marines around her immediately stopped joking. Weapons came up. Final checks were performed. They became something different in an instant. Something focused and deadly. All right, people, listen up, Elena called out, her voice carrying over the preparations. This is a colony defense operation. Civilian population with zero combat experience. The locals are bird people called Valerians, and from what intel says, they're fragile. That means watch your fire zones, and no heavy ordnance near civilian structures, unless absolutely necessary. Questions? What about the Krethik, Master Chief? Someone called out. Elena's smile was cold. Kill every single one of them. Back on the bridge, Maria watched the battle develop on multiple fronts. In space, the Indomitable had destroyed nearly half the Krethic fleet. But the remaining bioships were learning to keep their distance, harassing with long-range plasma fire, while avoiding her devastating railguns. On the ground, the swarm was establishing a beachhead in the colony. "Captain," James said quietly, "we need to make a decision. We can hold space superiority, or we can provide close ground support. We can't do both effectively with the damage we've taken." Maria knew he was right. The Indomitable was powerful, but it wasn't invincible. They had taken dozens of hits. Multiple systems were operating on backups. If she divided her focus, the Krethic might exploit the weakness and break through on one front or the other. But that wasn't the decision Maria struggled with. The real question was simpler and more difficult. How many of her people was she willing to sacrifice for strangers? 40,000 civilians who had done nothing wrong except be in the wrong place when monsters arrived. She thought of Earth, of the cities and towns where her own people lived. She thought of what she would want if the situation were reversed. "Launch all Marine drop pods," Maria ordered. "Full deployment. We take the ground fight to them." James nodded, understanding her choice. "And in space?" "We hold the line," Maria said simply. "No Krethic ships get past us to the planet. I don't care if we have to ram them." "Aye, Captain." The Indomitable shuddered as launch tubes fired. 2,000 Marines in armored drop pods shot toward the planet below like meteors. Elena Vasquez rode in the lead pod, her stomach doing familiar flips as the atmospheric entry began. The pod's interior glowed red from friction heat. G-forces pressed her into her seat. She had made this drop 100 times. It never got easier. Through her helmet display, Elena could see the tactical situation developing. The Krethic had landed in the colony's northern district and were spreading out with frightening speed. The Valarians had some kind of local security forces, but from the sensor reports, they were being overrun. The bird people had weapons designed for peacekeeping, not warfare. The Krethic, on the other hand, were weapons themselves, evolved for slaughter. Elena's drop pods screamed through the atmosphere, retro thrusters firing only at the last possible second. The impact when they hit the ground was bone-jarring, despite the crash harness. Immediately, explosive bolts fired, and the pod's sides blew outward. Elena was moving before the smoke cleared, rifle up and scanning for targets. Around her, 2,000 more pods were landing in a carefully orchestrated pattern that would encircle the Krethic beachhead. Marines poured out, forming up into squads with the smooth efficiency of constant training. Elena accessed the local communications network and connected to the Valerian command frequency. "Threshold 7 Command, this is Master Chief Vasquez, Terran Defense Forces. We have boots on the ground. Transmit positions of your forces so we don't shoot friendlies." There was a moment of static, then a musical voice responded, shocked and confused. You've landed soldiers? On our world?" Elena replied bluntly, "Ma'am, the Krethic have landed soldiers on your world. We're here to kill them before they kill you. Now please transmit your force positions." Yes, of course, transmitting now." Data flooded Elena's display. She saw immediately that the Valerian security forces were pulled back to defensive positions around civilian shelters. They were trying to protect their people, rather than engage the enemy. It was noble, but tactically stupid. The Krethic would simply overwhelm each position in turn. "All units, this is Vasquez," she broadcast on the Marine command net. "The locals are in defensive positions. We're going to take the fight to the swarm. Advance by squads, maintain fire discipline, and remember we have civilians all around us. Let's show these bugs why you don't mess with protected species." The Marines moved out. Elena watched her tactical display as 2,000 human soldiers began pushing into the colony. What the Valarians saw next would be recorded in their history as the moment they understood what a Deathworld species truly meant. The first Krethic warrior that encountered human marines died in a hail of rifle fire before it could even process what was happening. The second managed to charge forward, its massive chitinous form moving with insectoid speed. It crashed into a marine's position like a battering ram. The marine took the hit, his armor absorbing the impact, and put his rifle's barrel against the creature's head. Single shot. The Krethic dropped. In orbit aboard the Indomitable, Dr. Yuki Tanaka monitored the ground battle from the science station. As the ship's chief xenobiologist, she was fascinated by everything happening. First contact with a new species during a combat situation wasn't ideal, but it was certainly memorable. "Captain," Yuki said, pulling up comparative data, "I'm reading the local gravity at 0.8 Earth standard. Atmospheric composition is similar to Earth, but with higher oxygen content. The Valerians appear to be adapted for this lighter environment." "And our Marines?" Maria asked. "Operating at significantly enhanced capacity," Yuki replied. "In this gravity, they're faster and stronger than usual. The Krethic are adapted for 1.1 Earth gravity, so they're actually slightly weakened here." James looked at the xenobiologist. "Are you saying we have a physical advantage?" Yuki smiled. "Commander, humans evolved on a high-gravity world with a hyper-competitive ecosystem. We're persistence predators designed to hunt prey until it collapses from exhaustion. In this environment, against these opponents, our Marines are apex predators." On the ground, Elena's squad encountered their first major Krethic formation. 20 warriors, each one 3 meters tall, covered in natural armor plating. They charged forward with screeching calls that were designed to terrify prey species into freezing. The humans didn't freeze. They returned fire with disciplined 3-round bursts, their rounds finding gaps in the chitin armor. When the Krethic closed to melee range, the Marines didn't break formation. They had bayonets fixed to their rifles, and they used them. Elena found herself face to face with a Krethic warrior that had broken through the line. The creature was massive, easily twice her size, with mandibles that could shear through metal. It lunged at her with shocking speed. Elena sidestepped, years of combat experience guiding her movements, and brought her rifle around in a tight arc. The bayonet found the soft joint where the creature's head met its thorax. She fired twice, and the Krethic collapsed. "They're big," she commented to her squad, breathing hard, "but they're not bulletproof. Keep firing, keep moving. We've got this." From a shelter window, Administrator Chirith watched the battle unfolding in her colony's streets. She saw human soldiers moving through the ruins with a combination of caution and aggression that seemed contradictory. They would advance under covering fire, then hold positions and methodically eliminate enemies, then surge forward again. And they were winning. The Krethic swarm, which had terrorized the galaxy for centuries, was being pushed back by soldiers from a world she had never heard of. These humans fought with a ferocity that scared her almost as much as the swarm itself. But there was something else she noticed. When a Valerian civilian got caught in the crossfire, the humans immediately diverted resources to protect them. When a building collapsed with civilians inside, human soldiers stopped their advance to dig people out. They were warriors, yes, but they were also protectors. "Who are they?" Chirith whispered to herself, watching a human marine carry an injured Valerian child to safety while under fire. She didn't have an answer, but she was beginning to understand why the Council had locked these people away. The battle for Threshold 7 ground on through the long night. In the colony's eastern district, Corporal Jackson and his fire team had taken position behind a collapsed residential structure, trading fire with a group of Krethic warriors that had fortified themselves in what used to be a marketplace. The insectoid creatures were smart enough to use cover, which made them harder to kill than Jackson liked. "Chen, you got eyes on that big one in the center?" Jackson called to his squad mate, a sniper positioned 20 meters to his left. Yeah, I see him, Chen replied, her voice calm despite the plasma bolts that occasionally struck near her position. He's keeping his head down, though. I need him to give me a shot. I got an idea, Jackson said. He pulled a fragmentation grenade from his belt, checked the charge, and looked at his other teammate. Rodriguez, when this goes off, light them up with the SAW. Make them think we're pushing. Rodriguez, a stocky Marine carrying a squad automatic weapon, grinned. You got it, Corporal. Jackson armed the grenade and threw it in a perfect arc over the barricade. The explosion was satisfyingly loud. Rodriguez immediately opened fire with his automatic weapon, pouring suppressive fire into the Krethic position. Just as Jackson predicted, the large Krethic warrior raised his head to assess the threat. Chen's rifle cracked once, the Krethic's head snapped back, and it collapsed. Target down, Chen reported. Good shooting, Jackson said. Now let's... His words were cut off by a sound that made every human on the battlefield look up. It was a shriek, high-pitched and organic, that seemed to vibrate through the air itself. From the northern edge of the colony, something massive was moving. All units, be advised. Master Chief Vasquez's voice came over the command net, tight with tension. We have a broodmother emerging from the Krethic landing zone. Repeat, broodmother confirmed. All teams converge on northern sector. Jackson felt his stomach drop. He had heard about broodmothers in the tactical briefings. They were the Krethic command organisms, massive and intelligent. They could coordinate the entire swarm, turning a chaotic mob into an organized army. Move out, he told his team. Double time to the north. Across the colony, human Marines began converging on the northern sector. They moved through streets filled with debris and past Valerian civilians who watched them with a mixture of fear and hope. The humans were covered in combat damage now, their armor scored by plasma hits and chitin strikes. But they kept moving with the relentless determination that defined their species. Elena Vasquez reached the northern sector first. She positioned herself on a rooftop that gave her a clear view of the Krethic landing zone, and what she saw made her curse under her breath. The broodmother was enormous, easily 15 meters tall, with a bulbous abdomen that pulsed with sickening organic movement. She walked on 6 massive legs, each one ending in bladed points that dug into the street. Her upper body had 4 smaller limbs that carried bio-organic weapons, and her head was a nightmare of compound eyes and mandibles. Around her, Krethic warriors were forming up into organized units, responding to her pheromone commands. Indomitable, this is Vasquez, Elena said, opening a channel to the ship. I have visual on the broodmother, requesting orbital fire support on my coordinates. Captain Okonkwo's voice came back immediately. Negative, Master Chief. Too many civilian structures in that area. Collateral damage would be unacceptable. Elena had expected that answer. She studied the tactical situation, watching as more Marines arrived and took positions around the northern sector. They had maybe 400 soldiers in position now, against roughly 1,000 Krethic warriors, organized by the broodmother. The numbers weren't good, but numbers weren't everything. All units, this is Vasquez, she broadcast. We're going to do this the old-fashioned way. Fix bayonets and prepare for close assault. We're going to kill that mother and break the swarm. There was a moment of silence on the command net. What Elena was suggesting was essentially a suicide charge. They would take heavy casualties. Then Corporal Jackson's voice came through, young and determined. Master Chief, Jackson's team ready to advance. Chen's team ready, another voice added. Rodriguez here. Let's do this. One by one, every squad leader checked in. 400 humans, facing impossible odds, and not one of them hesitated. Elena felt a surge of pride so strong it almost hurt. This was humanity at its finest. This was why they were the species that looked at Deathworlds and called them home. Then let's give these bugs something to remember, Elena said. On my mark. In the Valerian Command Center, Administrator Chirith watched the human tactical displays that the Marines had shared with her. She saw the positions, saw the numbers, understood what the humans were about to attempt. They're going to attack? Plix asked, his voice high with disbelief. But they're outnumbered 3-1. They're insane, another Valerian officer whispered. Chirith said nothing. She simply watched, and wondered what kind of species produced soldiers like this. Elena stood on her rooftop, looking at her Marines assembled in the streets below. They had formed into a broad line, weapons ready, bayonets fixed. These weren't the shiny new soldiers who had left Earth months ago. They were scarred, tired, and pushed to their limits. But they were unbroken. For Earth, Elena said quietly, then raised her voice. For Threshold 7, for everyone who can't fight for themselves, advance. The human line moved forward. They didn't run wildly. They advanced with discipline, covering each other, maintaining formation, but they moved with purpose, closing the distance to the Krethic positions with steady inevitability. The Broodmother saw them coming. She shrieked commands, and her warriors charged forward to meet the humans. The two forces collided in the streets of Threshold 7. The sound was indescribable, a mixture of gunfire, screeching, and shouted commands. Humans fired their rifles until the Krethic were too close, then switched to bayonets and combat knives. The fighting became a brutal, close-quarters melee. Jackson found himself fighting back-to-back with Chen, both of them surrounded by Krethic warriors. His rifle clicked empty, and he used it as a club, breaking chitin and mandibles. A warrior grabbed him with its front limbs, trying to drag him down, and Chen shot it point-blank. "Thanks," Jackson gasped. "Don't mention it," Chen replied, reloading with shaking hands. All across the battlefield similar scenes played out. The humans were taking casualties, but they weren't breaking. They fought with a ferocity born from a million years of evolution on a world that tried to kill them every day. The Krethic were fierce, but they had never encountered prey that fought back like this. Elena pushed through the chaos toward the Broodmother. The massive creature was the key. Kill her, and the swarm would lose its coordination. She gathered a squad of volunteers, the best fighters she had, and they carved a path through the Krethic warriors. The Broodmother saw them coming. She raised herself up on her hind legs and shrieked to challenge. Her bioweapons fired streams of corrosive acid. 2 Marines went down screaming as the acid ate through their armor. Elena felt rage flood through her. She had lost too many people today. The count kept climbing in her head, names and faces of soldiers who would never go home. "Suppressing fire," she ordered. Her squad opened up with everything they had, focusing fire on the Broodmother's head. The creature recoiled, more surprised than hurt. Elena used the distraction to close the distance. She pulled an explosive charge from her belt, armed it, and looked at her squad. They understood what she was planning. They could see it in her eyes. "Master Chief, don't," Jackson said, having fought his way to her position. "There has to be another way." Elena smiled at the young corporal. "There is another way, but this is the fastest. Tell Captain Okonkwo I'm sorry about the cleanup." Before anyone could stop her, Elena sprinted toward the Broodmother. The creature saw her coming and brought its massive front legs down in a crushing blow. Elena dodged the first strike, took a glancing hit from the second that sent her sprawling. She tasted blood in her mouth. The Broodmother loomed over her, mandibles opening wide. Elena could see down its throat, see the organic weapons charging for a killing shot. She activated the explosive charge and jammed it between the plates of chitin on the creature's lower body. "For Earth," Elena whispered. The explosion was massive. The Broodmother's abdomen ruptured in a spray of organic matter. The creature toppled, its legs thrashing in death throes. Elena was at the center of the blast, and her armor couldn't protect her from that much force at point-blank range. Master Chief Elena Vasquez died instantly, taking the broodmother with her. The Krethik warriors, suddenly without their coordinating intelligence, became confused and disorganized. They began to scatter, some trying to retreat, others fighting in uncoordinated groups. The human Marines, grieving and furious, gave no quarter. They pushed forward with renewed aggression, eliminating every Krethik they found. The battle became a rout. Within 2 hours, the fighting was over. The Krethik swarm was broken, the survivors fleeing into the wilderness beyond the colony. Threshold 7 was saved, but the cost was written in the bodies of human Marines scattered through the streets. 231 dead, 316 wounded. Elena Vasquez, the Master Chief who had led them with courage and skill, was among the fallen. Corporal Jackson stood over the crater where Elena had made her last stand. He was covered in blood and combat residue, his rifle hanging loosely in his hands. Marines didn't cry on the battlefield, but his hands shook as he saluted the empty space where his commander had died. Around him, Valerian civilians emerged from their shelters. They walked among the human soldiers, seeing the price that had been paid for their survival. Many of the bird people were weeping openly. They approached the Marines cautiously, offering water and medical supplies, trying in small ways to help. An elderly Valerian female approached Jackson. She looked at the devastation, at the bodies of both Krethik and humans, and then at Jackson's young face. "Why?" she asked simply, her voice breaking. "Why did you fight for us? We are nothing to you." Jackson looked at her. His eyes were red-rimmed with exhaustion and grief. But when he spoke, his voice was firm. "Because someone had to," he said. "Because you called for help. Because that's what we do." The Valerian touched his arm gently with her feathered hand. "Your leader, the one who died killing the great beast, what was her name?" "Master Chief Elena Vasquez," Jackson said. "She was the best of us." "Then we will remember her," the Valerian said. "We will remember all of you." In orbit, Captain Maria Okonkwo stood on the damaged bridge of the Indomitable, reading the casualty reports. 718 dead between the ship crew and the Marines. 718 people who had boarded her ship expecting to go home someday. She felt each loss like a physical weight. Command was a lonely burden. "Captain," Commander Park said quietly, "the Council fleet is finally arriving. 6 ships, led by Ambassador Zethkorin." Maria looked up at the view screen. The Council vessels were elegant, beautiful ships designed as much for show as function. They approached slowly, cautiously, clearly surprised to find the battle already over. A communication request came through. Maria accepted it, and the holographic image of Ambassador Zethkorin appeared. The crystalline being looked at her with an expression that was hard to read on such an alien face. "This is most irregular," the ambassador said, his voice resonating like struck glass. "You have violated the quarantine. You have interfered in council space. You must withdraw immediately and submit to—" "No," Maria said simply. Zethkorin stopped mid-sentence. "I beg your pardon?" "I said no, Ambassador," Maria repeated, her voice cold and hard. "We responded to a distress call from a colony under attack. We saved 40,000 civilians while your fleet debated logistics. We lost 718 of my people doing the right thing. So no, I will not apologize, I will not withdraw, and I will not submit to anything." "You dare speak to me in such a manner? The Council will—" "The Council will what?" Maria interrupted. "Sanction us? Fine. That doesn't change what happened here. It doesn't bring back my dead. And it sure as hell doesn't explain why you left these people to die." She paused, then continued, making sure her words were being broadcast on all frequencies. "Let me be very clear, Ambassador. Earth will continue to respond to distress calls. We will continue to help those who need it. If that makes us criminals in your eyes, so be it. But we will not stand by and let innocent people die while bureaucrats debate procedure." The transmission ended. Maria closed her eyes and rubbed her temples. She had just potentially started a diplomatic incident that could isolate humanity for generations. Commander Park stood beside her. "That was quite a speech, Captain." "Probably just ended my career," Maria said tiredly. "But it was still the right thing to say. On the planet below, in the ruins of Threshold 7, humans and Valerians worked together to tend the wounded and recover the dead. And across the galaxy, on 100 different worlds, people who had never heard of humans before watched the recordings of the battle and began to ask questions. Questions that would change everything. The 3 days following the battle were strange and somber. The Indomitable remained in orbit over Threshold 7, running continuous repairs while her crew worked alongside Valerian technicians. Captain Okonkwo had initially refused the help, but Administrator Chirith insisted with a determination that surprised everyone. "Your people died protecting us," Chirith had said, her large eyes reflecting genuine grief. "The least we can do is help you repair your ship." The Valerians proved surprisingly skilled with technology, despite their lack of military experience. Their delicate hands and exceptional eyesight made them excellent at detailed repair work. They moved through the damaged sections of the Indomitable with quiet reverence, treating the human vessel like a wounded hero who deserved respect. In the ship's medical bay, Dr. Tanaka moved between beds, checking on the wounded Marines. Many would recover fully. Some would carry scars for the rest of their lives. A few would need cybernetic replacements for limbs too damaged to save. Each one bore their injuries with a stoic acceptance that broke Yuki's heart. "Hey Doc," called out a Marine named Williams, his left arm wrapped in regenerative bandages. "Is it true that the bird people are building a memorial?" "The Valerians, Williams," Yuki corrected gently. "And yes, I heard they're constructing a monument in the northern sector, where Master Chief Vasquez fell." "Good," Williams said, settling back into his bed. "She deserves that." All across the medical bay, heads nodded in agreement. Elena Vasquez had become something more than their commander in death. She had become a symbol of everything the Terran Defense Forces stood for. Sacrifice, courage, putting others before yourself. On the bridge, Maria stood looking at her command chair. The explosion that had damaged the primary bridge had torn through this section, killing her communications officer and 2 junior lieutenants. Their positions now sat empty, covered in plastic sheeting, while repairs continued around them. Every time Maria looked at those empty stations, she felt the weight of command pressing down on her. "Captain, you need to see this," Commander Park said, interrupting her thoughts. He gestured to the communications console where a junior officer was working. Maria walked over. "What is it?" "Messages, Captain," the communications officer said, her eyes wide. "Hundreds of them. Maybe thousands. They started coming in about 6 hours ago, and they haven't stopped." "Messages from whom?" "Everyone," the officer said. "Species we've never heard of. Colonies across Council space. Private citizens. Even some Council officials. They're all, well, you should listen." It was from a Valerian colony on the far side of the galaxy, their voice translator rendering their musical speech into flat English. "This is the Valerian colony of Harmony 2. We heard what your people did at Threshold 7. We heard how you answered a call for help when the Council would not. We want you to know that we are grateful. If humans ever need help, we will answer your call." The message ended. The officer played another, this one from a species called the Zarin, insectoid creatures who spoke in clicking sounds. "Human warriors, the Zarin Collective acknowledges your courage. We too have suffered from the Krethic swarm. We too have waited for Council aid that came too late. Know that the Zarin stand with Earth." Maria listened to message after message. They came from all across the galaxy. from species humanity had never contacted, expressing gratitude, offering friendship, and asking a question that appeared in dozens of different forms. "Where have you been? Why didn't we know about you? Can you help us too?" "My God," James said quietly, "it's spreading. The word is spreading faster than we can track it." Maria felt something shift in her chest. This was bigger than a single battle now. This was the moment when humanity stepped onto the galactic stage, not as conquerors or invaders, but as protectors. "Get me a secure channel to Earth," she said. "High Command needs to know what's happening." While the communications officer worked to establish the connection, Maria walked to the viewport and looked down at Threshold 7. She could see the scars of battle from orbit, the burned sections of the colony where fighting had been fiercest, but she could also see activity, reconstruction beginning. The Valerians were resilient. The channel to Earth opened. Admiral Chen's weathered face appeared on the screen, transmitted across light years through the quantum communications array. "Captain Okonkwo," the Admiral said, "I've been reading your reports. Hell of a situation you found yourself in." "Sir, I apologize for violating the quarantine protocols, but—" "Maria," Admiral Chen interrupted, using her first name which he never did in official communications. "Stop. You did exactly what you should have done, what you were trained to do. You saved lives." Maria felt relief wash over her. "Thank you, sir." "That being said, we have a political situation on our hands," the Admiral continued. "The Galactic Council is making official protests. They're demanding that we withdraw all our ships back to Sol System and cease all operations in Council space." "And our response?" Admiral Chen smiled, and it wasn't a pleasant expression. "Our response is that Earth doesn't recognize the Council's authority over humanitarian operations. If people call for help, we will respond. Period." "Sir, that could lead to a confrontation." "Let it," the Admiral said. "Humanity spent 30 years isolated because we scared them. Maybe it's time they understood that there are things more dangerous than humans. Things like indifference to suffering. Things like abandoning people who need help because it's not convenient." He paused, then continued. "Maria, High Command is sending you new orders. You're to proceed to the Council homeworld of Centris Prime. You're going to speak before the Galactic Assembly and present Earth's case for why we should be allowed to continue operations." Maria felt her stomach clench. "Sir, I'm not a diplomat. I'm a ship captain." "You're the captain who saved Threshold 7, Admiral Chen replied. "You're exactly who needs to deliver this message. Besides, we're sending Ambassador Harrison to meet you there. He'll handle the formal diplomacy. You just need to tell them the truth about what happened." "Understood, sir." "And Maria, we're proud of you. All of Earth is proud of you and your crew. You've done something remarkable. Now go finish it." The transmission ended. Maria stood in silence for a moment, processing the new orders. She was going to speak before the Galactic Council, the organization that had isolated humanity for 3 decades. She was either going to open a new chapter in human-alien relations, or start a war. No pressure. "Helm, plot a course for Centris Prime," she ordered. "Best possible speed." "Aye, Captain." Before they could leave, Maria insisted on attending the memorial service for the fallen. It took place in the northern sector of Threshold 7, where Elena Vasquez had made her last stand. The Valerians had worked day and night to create a monument, and the result was breathtaking. They had carved a massive sculpture from white stone, depicting a human Marine standing with a rifle, one hand extended protectively. The figure's face was covered by a helmet, making it anonymous, universal. At the base were inscribed the names of all 718 humans who had died saving the colony. Master Chief Elena Vasquez's name was at the top, carved in letters that seemed to glow in the sunlight. Thousands of Valerians gathered for the ceremony, along with every able-bodied human from the Indomitable. Maria stood at the front, looking at the names of her crew members, and felt tears threaten to break through her professional composure. Administrator Chirith stepped forward to speak. Her musical voice carried across the gathered crowd. "We Valerians have lived in peace for 1,000 generations," she said. "We forgot what it meant to face true danger. We forgot that peace must sometimes be defended. When the darkness came for us, we called out in desperation, not knowing if anyone would answer." She paused, looking at the human crew members standing at attention. These humans answered. They came from across the stars, from a world we did not know existed, and they stood between us and annihilation. They fought for us, they bled for us. 718 of them died for us. Her voice cracked with emotion. "We can never repay this debt, but we will never forget it. From this day forward, every Valerian child will learn the name Elena Vasquez. They will learn what it means to sacrifice yourself for others. They will learn that courage is not the absence of fear, but action in the face of it." Kirith turned to face Maria directly. "Captain Okonkwo, on behalf of every Valerian in this colony and across the stars, I say thank you. Thank you for answering our call. Thank you for proving that there is still heroism in the galaxy." Maria stepped forward, her dress uniform immaculate, despite everything they had been through. She looked at the memorial, at the names of her crew, and then at the gathered crowd. "Master Chief Vasquez and all who fell here did not die because they were fearless," Maria said, her voice strong and clear. "They died because they believed in something bigger than themselves. They believed that when someone calls for help, you answer. No matter the cost, no matter the odds." She paused, choosing her next words carefully. "The Galactic Council says humans are dangerous. They're right. We are dangerous. We're dangerous to bullies, we're dangerous to predators, we're dangerous to anyone who threatens the innocent. And we will continue to be dangerous in that way, regardless of what any council says." She saluted the memorial, and behind her, every human crew member snapped to attention and saluted as one. The sound of their synchronized movement echoed across the square. Later, as the Indomitable prepared to depart, Corporal Jackson stood in the cargo bay, helping load the last supplies. He had been promoted to sergeant in the field, taking over part of Elena's old duties. The responsibility weighed on him, but he was determined to honor her memory. A group of young Valerians approached hesitantly. They carried something wrapped in cloth. "Sergeant Jackson," one of them asked, his voice soft, "we wanted to give you something, for your ship." They unwrapped the cloth, revealing a flag. It was sewn from materials that shimmered in the light, and it depicted both the Valerian colony symbol and the Earth flag, intertwined together. Below them were words stitched in both languages. "Those who stand for others shall never stand alone." Jackson felt his throat tighten. "Thank you," he managed to say. "We'll fly it with honor." The young Valerians smiled, their alien features expressing something universally recognizable: gratitude and hope. As the Indomitable pulled away from Threshold 7, Maria stood on her repaired bridge and watched the planet shrink behind them. The journey to Centris Prime would take 2 weeks through the relay stations. 2 weeks to prepare to face the Galactic Council. "Captain," Commander Park said, "do you think they'll listen to us?" Maria considered the question. She thought about the messages still flooding in from across the galaxy. She thought about the Valerians and their memorial. She thought about what humanity represented now, whether they wanted to or not. "I don't know if they'll listen," she said honestly, "but we're going to make them hear us." The Indomitable jumped to faster-than-light speed, carrying with it the hopes of a species that had spent too long in isolation. Behind them, on Threshold 7, the memorial stood as proof that some things were worth fighting for. And ahead of them, on Centris Prime, the Galactic Council waited, unaware that their carefully ordered galaxy was about to change forever. Centris Prime was beautiful in a way that made Maria uncomfortable. The planet was the capital of the Galactic Council, and everything about it screamed artificial perfection. Crystal towers rose kilometers into the sky, connected by graceful bridges that seemed to defy physics. Gardens floated on gravity platforms, creating layers of carefully cultivated nature. The whole world looked like someone's idea of paradise, designed by committee and built to impress. The Indomitable looked distinctly out of place as it approached the orbital platforms. The human Dreadnought, still bearing scars from the battle at Threshold 7, despite extensive repairs, sat among the elegant council vessels like a bulldog at a cat show. Maria could feel the stares from every ship in the system. "Captain, we're being hailed by Centris Orbital Control," reported the communications officer. "They're asking us to maintain our current position and not approach the planet until they grant permission." Maria raised an eyebrow. Asking or telling? The translation is diplomatic, but I'd say they're telling. "Maintain position then," Maria ordered. "Let's not start a fight before we even get to the talking part." Ambassador Richard Harrison stood beside her on the bridge. He was a tall man in his 60s, with gray hair and the kind of face that had negotiated 100 treaties back on Earth. He had arrived at Threshold 7 on a fast courier ship 3 days ago, and he had spent the journey to Centris Prime coaching Maria on diplomatic protocols. "They're making us wait," Harrison said mildly. "It's a power play. They want us to understand that we're here at their sufferance." "Lovely," Maria muttered. "How long do we let them make their point?" "Oh, at least an hour or two. Any less, and they'll be insulted. Any more, and we look weak." Harrison smiled slightly. "Welcome to interstellar diplomacy, Captain. It's even more frustrating than combat." He wasn't wrong. The Indomitable sat in orbital space for 3 hours before receiving clearance to send down a shuttle. Maria used the time to review her statement one more time, though she practically had it memorized by now. The shuttle that carried them to the surface was piloted by Lieutenant Chen, who had recovered from her injuries enough to return to duty. She guided the craft through the ornate docking procedures with professional precision, though Maria caught her muttering about over-designed nonsense under her breath. The council chamber was even more impressive than the planet. It was a massive amphitheater carved from a single piece of crystalline material that refracted light into rainbow patterns. Hundreds of seats arranged in concentric circles faced a central speaking platform. Each seat was designed for a different species, accommodating various body types, atmospheres, and even different gravities through localized field generators. Maria and Ambassador Harrison were led to a waiting area adjacent to the main chamber. Through a transparent wall, they could see the council members filing in. There were dozens of species, each one unique. The Valerians were there, including Administrator Chirith, who had traveled from Threshold 7. There were crystalline beings like Ambassador Zethkorin, gaseous entities in containment suits, massive creatures that looked like they belonged underwater, and beings so alien that Maria couldn't even identify their basic body structure. "Quite a sight, isn't it?" Harrison said, watching her expression. "It's intimidating," Maria admitted. "All these species, all these different perspectives. How do they ever agree on anything?" "Slowly and with great difficulty. That's part of the problem. The Council is excellent at maintaining the status quo. They're terrible at responding to crises that require quick action." A chime sounded, and a holographic figure appeared before them. It was a translation avatar, a neutral form that would relay messages. "The Council is ready to hear your testimony, Captain Okonkwo. You will have 20 minutes to present your case. The Council will then deliberate and respond. Please follow the protocol guide." The avatar vanished. Maria took a deep breath and adjusted her uniform one last time. She had chosen to wear her duty uniform rather than the formal dress version. Let them see the practical working officer, not the polished showpiece. "You'll do fine," Harrison said. "Just speak from the heart. Tell them what happened and why it mattered." Maria nodded and walked into the council chamber. The feeling of being watched by hundreds of alien beings was indescribable. Maria walked to the central platform, her boots clicking on the crystalline floor. The sound echoed in the sudden silence. Every eye, sensor, and perception organ in the room focused on her. The council speaker, a dignified being who looked like a cross between a mantis and an orchid, activated the translation systems. "Captain Maria Okonkwo of the Terran Defense Forces," the speaker said in a voice that seemed to come from everywhere at once. "You stand before the Galactic Council to answer for violations of the quarantine protocols established by Council Decree 30 standard years ago. How do you respond?" Maria stood straight and looked around the chamber, making eye contact with as many council members as she could. "I don't," she said simply. A ripple of confusion moved through the chamber. The speaker tilted their head in what might have been surprise. "You refuse to answer the charges?" "No," Maria clarified. "I refuse to accept that answering a distress call is a violation. I refuse to accept that saving lives is something I need to apologize for." She activated the holographic display on the platform. Images from Threshold 7 appeared, floating in the air above her head. The Krethic swarm attacking, the colony's shields failing, the desperate call for help. 28 days ago, Administrator Chirith broadcast a distress signal on all emergency frequencies. She did this because her colony was under attack by the Krethic swarm, and the Council fleet was too far away to help. 40,000 civilians were going to die. More images appeared. The Indomitable dropping out of hyperspace, the battle in orbit, Marines landing on the planet. The Terran Defense Forces received that call. We were the closest ship capable of responding. We had 47 minutes to decide whether to help strangers from a government that has isolated us for 3 decades, or to follow the letter of the quarantine and let 40,000 people die. Maria paused, letting that sink in. We chose to help. We fought the Krethic swarm. We defended the colony. We saved those 40,000 lives. And we lost 718 of our people doing it. The chamber was absolutely silent. Images of the fallen appeared, name after name, face after face. Human soldiers who had died protecting aliens they had never met. "I'm told the Council is angry that we violated the quarantine," Maria continued. "I'm told you're debating sanctions and punishments. I'm told that humanity's actions are cause for concern." She looked directly at Ambassador Zeth Korin, who sat in the front row. "You want to know what concerns me, Ambassador? What concerns me is that the Council fleet arrived 3 days after the battle was over. What concerns me is that you left those people to die while you debated logistics. What concerns me is that there are dozens of species in this room who are apparently okay with that." Zeth Korin started to respond, but the council speaker cut him off. "Captain Okonkwo, you speak with great passion, but you misunderstand the complexity of council operations. We cannot simply respond to every distress call. Resources must be allocated carefully. Priorities must be—" 40,000 lives weren't a priority, Maria interrupted. "At what point do lives become a priority? 50,000? 100,000? Or is it only a priority when it's politically convenient?" The speaker's composure cracked slightly. "You are out of order, Captain." "Maybe I am," Maria agreed. "But I'm also right, and everyone in this chamber knows it." She changed the holographic display again. Now it showed the messages they had received, hundreds of them, from species across the galaxy. These are messages sent to Earth in the days following the battle. Species we've never contacted, asking for help, asking why we were hidden from them, asking if we can protect them too. Administrator Chirith stood up in her seat. "May I speak, Council Speaker?" The speaker hesitated, then nodded. Chirith's musical voice carried through the translation systems. "I called for help that day. I used the forbidden frequencies because I was desperate, and my people were dying. The Council failed us. These humans did not. She looked around the chamber at her fellow council members. I have lived my entire life believing the Council would protect us. I raised my children with that belief. And when the moment came, when we truly needed that protection, the Council was not there. But the humans were. More beings stood up. A representative from the Zarin Collective spoke next, their clicking translated into Standard Galactic. The Zarin have lost 3 colonies to the Krethic swarm. Each time we called for help, each time the Council arrived too late. We wish to know why these humans, isolated and unknown, respond faster than the government that claims to protect us. One by one, representatives from smaller species stood and voiced similar concerns. The careful order of the council chamber began to crack. This wasn't about the quarantine anymore. This was about decades of accumulated grievances, about protection promised but not delivered, about a system that worked well for the powerful but failed the vulnerable. The council speaker called for order, but it took several minutes for the chamber to quiet down. Ambassador Harrison, watching from the observer's gallery, smiled slightly. Maria had done it. She had turned this from a trial into a referendum on the council itself. When order was finally restored, the speaker addressed Maria again. Captain Okonkwo, the council must deliberate on this matter. We will recess for 3 days and then present our decision. You are to remain in orbit and not leave the system. Is that understood? Yes, Maria said. We'll wait. She left the chamber with as much dignity as she had entered, though inside she was shaking. She had just challenged the most powerful government in the galaxy, and there was no telling how they would respond. Over the next 3 days, the Indomitable's crew followed developments through the news networks that operated in Council space. The footage from Maria's testimony had gone viral. Every species with a communication network was discussing it. Opinion was sharply divided. Some called humans dangerous warmongers who would destabilize the galaxy. Others called them heroes who had done what the Council should have done. The debate raged on hundreds of worlds. On the Indomitable, Maria tried to maintain normal operations. The crew needed routine, needed to feel like they were still a military vessel with a mission. But everyone knew they were in a holding pattern, waiting for a decision that could determine humanity's future in the galaxy. The Council had reached a decision. Maria and Ambassador Harrison returned to the Council chamber. This time, the atmosphere was different. There was tension in the air, a sense that something significant was about to happen. The Council speaker addressed the assembled beings. The Galactic Council has deliberated on the matter of humanity's actions at Threshold 7. We have heard arguments from all sides. We have considered the implications carefully. The speaker paused, and Maria felt her heart hammering in her chest. The Council has decided that the quarantine of humanity will be lifted. Earth will be granted provisional membership in the Galactic Council, with full membership to be considered after a probationary period of 5 standard years. Maria felt relief wash over her, but the speaker wasn't finished. Furthermore, the Council acknowledges that our current emergency response protocols are inadequate. We have been complacent in our prosperity and slow to aid those in need. This must change. The speaker looked directly at Maria. Earth has proposed what they call the Terran Shield Initiative. Human warships would patrol established routes, respond to emergencies, and provide protection to Council members who lack adequate defense. In exchange, Earth requests trade agreements, cultural exchange, and representation in Council governance. The Council accepts this proposal with modifications. Earth will deploy no more than 20 vessels initially, operating under Council oversight. After the 5-year probationary period, this arrangement will be reviewed. Maria couldn't believe what she was hearing. They had won. Not completely, not without restrictions, but they had won. However, the speaker continued, and Maria's relief turned to concern. Earth must prove its commitment to the principles it espouses. There is a region of space, called the Dead Zone, where several Council fleets have vanished without explanation. Ancient AI constructs, remnants from a long-dead civilization, are believed to be responsible. If Earth truly wishes to be the protectors you claim to be, you will investigate this threat. Maria understood immediately. This was a test, possibly an impossible one. The Council was sending them into danger to see if humanity would survive or fail. "When do we leave?" Maria asked. "Whenever you are ready, Captain Okonkwo. The Council will be watching." The session ended, and Maria walked out of the chamber with Ambassador Harrison. "They're testing us," she said quietly. "Of course they are," Harrison replied. "But think about what we've already accomplished. Humanity has a seat at the galactic table. We have permission to operate openly. We have a chance to prove ourselves. By flying into a death trap, by doing what we do best," Harrison corrected, "going where others fear to go, and facing the unknown." Maria couldn't argue with that. She returned to the Indomitable and assembled her senior staff in the conference room: Commander Park, Dr. Tanaka, the new Marine Commander Major Williams, and the heads of all departments. "I'll make this brief," Maria said. "The Council has lifted the quarantine. We've been accepted as provisional members, and our first assignment is to investigate the Dead Zone." She brought up a star map showing the region in question. It was a sizable area of space where multiple Council expeditions had vanished without trace. "We don't know what's in there," Maria continued. "Ancient AI, according to the Council. Possibly weapon systems that still function after thousands of years. Whatever it is, it's dangerous enough that the Council has been unable to deal with it. So they're throwing us at it to see what happens," Park said dryly. "Essentially, yes." Maria looked around the table at her officers. "I won't lie to you. This is dangerous. This is probably the most dangerous thing we've ever attempted. And we just lost over 700 people at Threshold 7. I won't order anyone to come with me if they don't want to." Major Williams, who had been a sergeant before being promoted to replace Elena Vasquez, spoke up. "With respect, Captain, the Master Chief died protecting people who couldn't protect themselves. If we turn back now because something is dangerous, we dishonor her memory." Around the table, heads nodded in agreement. "Then it's settled," Maria said. "We go to the Dead Zone, we find out what's killing Council ships, and we deal with it." Dr. Tanaka raised her hand tentatively. "Captain, can I just say something?" "Of course, Doctor." "I've been studying the various species we've encountered," Yuki said. "The Valerians, the Council members, all of them. And I've noticed something. They're all specialized. They're peaceful, or scientific, or artistic, or commercial. They've spent thousands of years becoming really good at one thing." She paused, gathering her thoughts. "But humans, we're generalists. We can fight, yes, but we can also explore, build, create, negotiate, and adapt. We come from a world that threw everything at us, and we survived by being flexible. That's our real advantage. Not that we're better fighters, but that we can do everything reasonably well." "Your point, Doctor?" Maria asked. "My point is that whatever is in the Dead Zone, whatever ancient nightmare is waiting there, I think we have a better chance of handling it than the Council does, because we don't give up." "We don't know how to give up." Maria smiled. "Then let's go teach these ancient AIs that they picked the wrong species to mess with." The Indomitable departed Centris Prime the next day. As they prepared to jump to hyperspace, Maria stood on her bridge and looked at her crew. They had been through hell at Threshold 7. They had lost friends and comrades. They had every reason to be afraid of what was coming. But they weren't afraid. They were ready. "All stations report ready, Captain," Commander Park said. "Then let's go make history," Maria replied. "Helm, jump to the Dead Zone. Let's see what's waiting for us out there." The Indomitable's engines hummed with power, space distorted around the massive vessel, and then it vanished into hyperspace. Behind them, on Centris Prime, the Galactic Council watched and waited to see if humanity would succeed or become just another vanished expedition. But across the galaxy, on hundreds of worlds, other beings watched too, and many of them hoped that these strange humans from Earth would succeed, because for the first time in a long time, someone was willing to face the galaxy's nightmares instead of hiding from them. In her captain's quarters, Maria Okonkwo recorded a message to be sent back to Earth. "Admiral Chen, this is Captain Okonkwo. We're heading into the dead zone as ordered. I don't know what we'll find there. I don't know if we'll make it back. But I want you to know that this crew, this ship, these people, they're the finest I've ever had the honor to serve with." She paused, thinking about Elena Vasquez and all the others who hadn't made it home. "If we don't come back, tell Earth what we tried to do. Tell them we believed in something bigger than ourselves. Tell them that humanity didn't stop reaching for the stars, even when the stars reached back." Maria ended the recording and sent it on its way, a message that would take weeks to reach Earth through the communication relays. Then she went back to her bridge, because there was work to do. There were monsters to face, and mysteries to solve. There were people counting on them, even if those people didn't know it yet. The Indomitable flew on through the dark between stars, carrying with it the hopes and dreams of a species that had looked at the word impossible and decided it was just a suggestion. Whatever waited in the dead zone, it was about to learn what humanity had known for millennia. We don't leave people behind. We don't back down from challenges. And when something threatens the innocent, we stand up and fight, no matter the odds. And the galaxy was about to get a very thorough lesson in exactly that.